In our Mauka to Makai watch, today we take a closer look at the University of Hawaii's College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, CTAR. It developed the Agricultural Extension Service in the late 1920s. Its mission? To use science to find the best growing practices for crops and livestock. Glenn Teves has been a UH Extension agent for 4 decades. He's based in Molokai. You might say that ag is in his blood. His grandparents established the Manoa Valley homestead back in 1938. That is where Teves grew up, learning hands-on how to care for the cattle, the pigs, the chickens, and the goats on the family's 3-acre property. He received his horticulture degree from UH and became the first extension agent to work with Hawaiian homesteaders there on Molokai. The Conversations Lillian Tsang sat down with Teves to talk about the ins and outs of growing food in Hawaii.
We're still the largest college in the university, but around early 2000s, we were downsized because of funding, and we went from 12 departments to 6 departments. So that's a concern because now you don't have specialists in certain areas like agriculture, engineering, agriculture economics, and some of these other areas have kind of been lost, and you don't have these specialists that you can access. So you become weak in certain areas. So that is a concern even today because the extension agents have to cover a lot of ground, and in some instances they may not have the background to help with the issue. And if you look in Hawaii, we have, say, 350 vegetable and herb crops. You have new crops that have come in with the immigrants. The Southeast Asians brought in their own types of vegetables and herbs. So you have a lot of different crops, probably more so than any place else in the United States.
Go to Chinatown, you are seeing fruits that you might not have seen like 20 years ago, like the soursop. If you have people who are studying it, you might say this is the best practice on growing it.
Yes, and not only that, what variety to grow. And we've done a lot of research in this area, growing different types of mangoes and citrus and lychee, longan, and then you have all this new stuff coming in, jaboricaba and dragon fruits, and yeah, it's unlimited.
Why is it important to know what variety to grow?
Some varieties do very well in Hawaii, and some do not. Avocado would probably be a good example. You can grow an avocado that grows really well in your backyard, or you could grow one full of strings. On top of that, we have all these different soils, all these different climates. Of all the climatic zones in the world, we have, I think, all except 2. I think one of them is like tundra. We don't have any tundra, year-round ice. But we have most of the climatic zones, as well as 160 soil types, more than any place else in the world. So if you multiply those 2 numbers together, this is how many microclimates we have. So in theory, you can grow just about any crop. You just have to find that microclimate. Asparagus grows almost anywhere, but there's some crops that grow specific, such as maybe proteas up in Kula. You have teas up in Waimea. So you can find a climate that will fit just about every crop. There's this lady up in Waimea that grows wasabi in her backyard. She has running water, and that's another crop that's not that easy to grow any place else in the United States, but it grows in Hawaii.
I think for the person who's just enticed by the idea of growing wasabi, but the reality is, like, if I were in, say, Ewa, too dry, I don't have the suitable conditions for that crop. But what you're saying is everybody has to do their own homework and find that right variety for your situation.
Yes, very true. The thing that a lot of people don't understand is in the tropics, and we're in the tropics, we're one of the only states that have this kind of climate, is that the nights are warm and the days are hot, but the nights are warm. And what that does to plants is they're not able to rest. In most areas, such as Caribbean climates or even on Mediterranean climates, especially Mediterranean climates, you have a hot day, but you got a cold night. And that cold night allows the plants to rest and build up their carbohydrates and their energy so they can handle the next day. And so varieties developed in the Mediterranean will have a hard time in the tropics growing. So we have to actually select varieties that can handle these special kind of conditions. Some plants are affected by the day length. Some are affected by, the climate changing too often, which is the norm for Hawaii right now. So yeah, you need to have, especially in Hawaii, you need to have heat-tolerant varieties. And some of this stuff is actually coming out of Asia, Taiwan, and China that have this similar climate, and they have developed varieties for these kind of conditions. So we have to seek that out. We have to test it against what we got in Hawaii to see if they're superior to what we already have, and then start moving into the more superior varieties.
So, as an extension agent, your job basically is to test these new varieties in the Hawaii climate that you're in.
Yes, and we've done a lot of this over the last 40 years on Molokai.
In Hawaii, what are some good varieties for a tomato?
Tomato, I think the Hawaii varieties are really good, Anahu and Heilani, and for the grapes, Komohana. And it's interesting because on some varieties, mainland varieties, they actually use the Hawaii varieties as parents to breed new varieties. And so one of them is called Celebrity. It's an All-America winner that actually was developed from Anahu. So that's another good variety.
Well, that's interesting. So Hawaii genes on the mainland to help them build a more, is it resilient tomato?
Disease resistance.
How about pepper?
Peppers, there's some diseases on peppers depending on where you are. If you're in a wet area, there's a bacteria, and there's also a Phytophthora root rot. So you would need to have resistance to those diseases. In other areas that are dry, you can have virus problems, tobacco mosaic virus, potato virus Y. So you need to have resistant varieties. So some of the companies on the mainland develop those types of varieties, but you need to know what problem you have so you can find those varieties.
It's amazing to hear that, 50% of the college was slashed into 2000. So it feels like then, as an extension agent, you had to take more on your plate.
I think the extension agents are having a real hard time right now. Some of them have retired, and because of the economic situation at the college, they're not hiring. So one example, we have an extension agent on the Big Island that covers from Honoka to Kau, about 80-mile stretch. And there's a lot of farms over there, and her job is just with is vegetables. Well, they call it edible crops, so that's fruits and vegetables. So one person to cover an 80-mile swath is a really tough job. And so, yeah, we're getting kind of overloaded at times. We need to work as a team to maybe specialize. Sometimes you cannot work one-on-one too much because it takes up too much time. So you need to move into more group-type activities. And that's where Zoom comes in now, where we can have workshops with 10, 15, 20 farmers together. We recently had this whole series for papaya growers. We have a meeting every Tuesday night, and we go through things such as soil samples and pest problems and those kind of things, and then multimedia written methods of communicating with the community.
I was watching your Local Seeds for Local Needs series, Molokai Extension, put out on YouTube. You are banking your knowledge on this platform. And is this a new series that has just started for the public?
Yeah, we just started that YouTube channel. Actually, that was filmed down at Maui College Farm. Unfortunately, Maui College is going to be shutting down the farm at the end of this year. I don't quite understand, but it may be funding, it may be other issues. So we'll be shutting down that farm, and we need to look for another home to do more demonstration type projects. We do trials down there. We have the Hawaiian Taro collection down there. We have native trees.
Is it going to be relocated?
We're really not sure. We're kind of in a very uncertain time right now, especially with the budget crunch with the state. And I think right now they have enough money, but come July 1st, things are going to change real fast.
So perhaps funding is an issue, but how about people using this resource? Are people going to the farm?
Yes, with this whole COVID pandemic, everybody wants to learn how to garden. Everybody wants to learn how to, farm. So we had 2 rounds of gardening down there. See, one of the real important things about extension is demonstration. I remember some farmers, telling me, hey, don't tell me, show me. So, okay, this is your variety we got in this row, and this is the other 2 varieties. Which one is better? And so they see for themselves. They go, wow, this variety is better than mine. I think I'll grow this variety. So that is part of technology transfer. But variety alone is not enough. I mean, you need to be growing it right. You need to make sure that your soil is healthy and it's alive, that you have all these microbes going on. You're creating a really good environment for plants to grow. And this is kind of the new direction. And a lot of people don't understand. I mean, they just like throw fertilizer and expect everything to grow. But, you got organic matter, you got all these other things, calcium, you need all these different nutrients are required in order to grow a good plant. And so that's where education comes in.
Well, Glenn, another hat that you wear is seed farmer for the Hawaii Seed Growers Network. Recently, I read your blog entry titled Kaulua. Explain Kaulua to our listeners.
Kaulua means the month of two minds. So the last 3 days on Molokai was like in the 80s, and the ground was cracking, and all these ants were coming out of the ground because there's no water. And then today, it's raining cats and dogs, there's thunder and lightning, and it's like, wait a minute, this is Kaulua, the transition time from the winter into more of the spring type weather. And then next month, March, which is in a lot of respects a very important month, the first day of spring is March 21st, and that's the spring equinox. And what that means is that the day and the night is the same length. So it's 12-hour days and 12-hour nights. And then the days will get longer all the way till June 21st, which is the longest day, the first day of summer.
So, Glenn, as a backyard gardener, what should I be doing during Kaulua to prepare?
This is a good time to get all your seeds started if you haven't. I mean, prepare your soil. If you got stuff in the ground, just nurture them because they're going to come alive. March is usually a very animated. The plants will come alive. They respond to that day length change, and they know they're out of the winter season. They're out of their sleepy stage, and they're going to start growing again. So you need to get ready. You got to make sure the plants are fertilized and they're getting ready to go. So you don't want to hold them back. So yeah, everything can be planted right now. I mean, spring stuff, summer stuff, whatever you want to eat. Just don't plant too much of one thing unless you eat a lot of that.
Okay. Quick question. Do we go seed direct into the ground, or should I start it inside and then transplant?
It depends on the crop. Okay, so, and this is a big problem. I mean, I get calls about this all the time. So this is how it works. For the large seeded things, they go direct in the ground. So that's like beans and squash and all this kind of stuff go in the ground. Root crops all go directly in the ground. So that's radishes and carrots and beets. Those all go directly in the ground because the root crops don't transplant well.
Okay.
And so the plants that you grow in the tray would be your small seeded stuff like lettuce and broccoli and your mustards, those kind of things, tomatoes, peppers and eggplants. Those all go in trays.
Okay.
So that's kind of the rule of thumb. But, I can teach this in a class, and then 2 weeks later somebody says, my beans are not doing too good in a tray. I said, do not put the beans in the tray. Put them directly in the ground.
Well, that was Glenn Teves. He's been working as Molokai's extension agent since 1981. His family homestead is called Puakala Farms. He's also a seed farmer for the Hawaii Seed Growers Network. We'll post links to the Molokai Extension YouTube page and the Hawaii Seed Growers Network, where you can find Glenn's blog and his newsletter for the Beginning Farmer Program.